Hello, everyone, and welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Ericka English, the Senior Director of Marketing and Communications for Volunteers of America, Texas. We have a very exciting conversation for you today, and I'm so excited to introduce our guests. We have in the house with us today Sheriff Marion Brown and also Lesley Mohney. She is the Director of Resolana Program for Volunteers of America, Texas. Now, before we get into our conversation today, I do want to say thank you to our sponsor today, Niagara Conservation. Niagara Conservation provides cost-saving plumbing solutions to the Volunteers of America, Texas Affordable Housing Program. Thank you so much for all you do. So to our conversation today, we're talking about human services as it relates to all the things that are happening in our county, what may be on the horizon, and just kind of a nice focus on a lighter side of what we're doing for people in our community. So Lesley, thank you for joining us here today as well.
Thank you.
I do want to ask you, Sheriff, how you see your role at the Sheriff's Office in supporting human services programs like Volunteers of America, Texas.
Okay, so the county jail is what I call a transitional place. It's that point where oftentimes when people come, they are in a thoughtful process. They are thinking about what got them there. They're thinking about how to recover from what got them there. And so it is often common for people to be more susceptible to receiving programs that we offer in our facilities in terms of how to keep them out of our facilities. So we try to provide those services for people from the ground up, and that is doing life skills, talking about things such as anger management, substance abuse, and things like that we try to provide for people.
Because those are what we would consider root causes to maybe some of the issues that people face in the community. And Lesley, you know that firsthand because of our program inside the Dallas County Jail for Women. You want to talk about Resolana a little bit?
Yes. We love the fact that 17 years ago, Dallas County Jail brought in Resolana. We're proud to say we're the first program in Dallas County Jail.
Wow.
And that was such an innovative thing for a jail to do. There's so many programs in prisons for people and not anything in the jails. In Dallas County, I've done an amazing job of adding to that. Over the last 17 years, I've just seen growth, and programming. Because exactly as you say, you've got them there. And you've got them there at a very pivotal time where if you give them choice to do something different, to learn something different,
Absolutely.
then they're going to make that choice, most likely. And so Resolana is a voluntary program. The women choose to come. And what we understand about incarcerated women is that they have multiple layers of unresolved trauma over periods of time. I'm a garden variety sexual abuse survivor. When I was young and people found out what was happening, everybody jumped in and tried to help me. What we understand about incarcerated women is they have multiple layers, physical and sexual abuse and domestic violence. And so they have these layers, and then nobody's paying attention. Even if they reach out and tell somebody, nobody has the resources or the ability or the wherewithal to help them in real time. So that trauma goes unresolved. So having that information, helping the women understand what their situation with unresolved trauma is the cornerstone of Resolana. And I think the cornerstone of all programming is to help them understand how they got into the jail circulation through their past.
And you have to give them credit too for wanting to face that trauma because you hear so many stories of people coming out years later about abuse, and people ask, well, what took you so long? Well, it may be hard to have that difficult conversation with yourself, and self-denial. I mean, it's a real thing to even come to grips with the fact that something like that happened to you, and then you want to go blame yourself. So it's something to work through. So I kudos to the ladies for even wanting to take that on.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite programs, and I love that. In about February, I think it is, that there's this special program and we get to come and participate and watch as the women, if you will, bear themselves to us. They share with us what they have discovered about themselves and speak on behalf of women who can't speak for themselves and that kind of thing. So it's always a great program to see.
Yeah, very emotional, that spoken word event that takes place. Now, Sheriff Brown, I wanted to ask you, is there any type of special training that law enforcement has to go through when having to deal with vulnerable populations?
Well, our whole WHOLE training is geared toward dealing with people who probably have some issues, be it economic, traumatic, classism, whatever. There are things that we are taught to deal with people. And right now, in fact, we have some mandated training that has come down recently from the legislation that says that we are going to have to be more trauma informed in terms of being investigators, in terms of dealing with people on a whole level. We have got to be trauma informed. I know a few years ago, if somebody said trauma informed, I go, what does that mean? What is that? You know, now I understand better. But I think it's important for us to have that training all across the board so that we can better serve the people that we come in contact with on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, because being in human services or close to it, you know, we're used to all the jargon and the terms related. But when we want to promote things to the community, you know, we have to be able to translate, so to speak. And after COVID or during COVID, you know, mental health became a very hot topic.
Oh, yes.
And I would like to know, since then, anything happening now or in the future in regards to the mental health component of dealing with people who have been just as impacted.
You know, you're right. I think we all stopped to take a look at ourselves during COVID, because if truth be told, I think we all had moments where we were like, oh, we wish this would hurry up and go away. Somebody just fix it and make it better. And so I think we were all forced to kind of perform some introspection, if you will. So what we have been doing is, first and foremost, we enjoy a great relationship with Parkland Hospital in our facilities, because they provide for us the medical, the mental, and the dental care that we're required to provide. And they are licensed healthcare professionals, so it's not like somebody's guessing at what services are necessary, what services are beneficial, what services to be provided. So we are providing that for our inmates. Then we have to look at our employees, because again, throughout COVID, you know, everybody was telecommuting, not the sheriff's department.
You were essential.
We were essential, and we could not, you know, work from home. We couldn't stay away. We had to come in, and we had to get right into the throes of the COVID, of the pandemic. And so in learning and in doing that, we learned that our people needed some attention in terms of mental health also. And so I'm proud about the fact that we have started the behavioral health unit at our department, which is geared toward employees. It provides employees an opportunity and an avenue to seek assistance. They don't have to report to somebody that they're going there. There's no report that's made back to the supervisor in terms of what they needed to talk about, but it's an avenue to help address the needs of our employees. And also in terms of mental health out in the community. It's a three-pronged approach. We're working up what we call a multi-crisis unit, where we're trying to have people who focus on those who are in mental health crisis when we respond to a call. Many of the cities are doing this type program now, and so we're trying to do it on a county level now.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, because we were forced to kind of be more self-focused, and a lot of us were forced into isolation.
Right.
At VOA, we have a couple of 24-hour centers as well for our reentry programs, and so you had half of the organization that was able to work from home, and then other people who did have to go in every day, and, you know, be caregivers for that particular population.
Yeah, and we are taught, even in the academy at the beginning of your career as a law enforcement officer, you are taught that if you are not whole, it is very difficult for you to take care of someone else. And so we try to provide that service to make ourselves more readily available to assist those who are charged to our care and our custody, as well as those who are out in the community.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right. That's right.
It doesn't work. So Lesley, any challenges, since we were talking about COVID, any kind of challenges that Resolana has faced post-pandemic?
Yes, one thing I do want to say, that I want to give a big shout out to your officers though about mental health, and working with the women who are all trauma survivors, the officers have to be firm and fair, right? They have to create a safe pod.
Right.
And they do that, but then they go above and beyond and understanding these women are working on issues.
Right.
They're going into a class talking about things that are so emotional coming out of that classroom. Your officers have done amazing jobs of sort of keeping that firm and fair, but allowing the women to be emotional and not punishing them for that, which I think is beautiful.
Very good.
I like that.
So,
Firm and fair.
Firm and
share
fair,
that.
firm, but not punishing them for having emotions.
Right.
So, after COVID, I like to tell stories before I answer questions. So after COVID, we did have a change in the Dallas County Jail. They have medical pods now, obviously, and they have to have step-down units to help make sure the people coming into the general populations aren't COVID. And so we lost our quote-unquote pod. We used to have a whole pod that was just ours, 64 souls that we lived together and kind of worked together, and everybody rowed the canoe in the same direction. And so now Dallas County does a great job of having a program pod. So you have some of the other, you have Prison Fellowship that provides programming, and you have Haven of Love programming. So there's a program pod, and then Resolana has up to 35 women in that pod. And so it's different, and I am so old that change is hard. And but I have grieved that on some level, and I know we're always kind of working back to someday maybe having a pod again. But that's been the major change, and we're working with it and working through it. But it's beautiful that the programming is still a priority in Dallas County.
Well, we've learned to pivot, right?
Right.
Yes,
Right.
pivot.
And it's interesting that you're talking about pre and post COVID, because there were a lot of changes that took place in the jail. A lot of things that we had to change. We had to modify. We had to cease altogether, or maybe we've not had an opportunity to resume those things yet, or maybe not resume them as they were pre-COVID. So some of those things we've resumed, but they don't look like what they looked like before COVID. So that created some consternation for us, because as you said, we don't like change. And so, you use the analogy about rowing the boat. I tell our people that we are turning a wheel, and that we're all spokes in that wheel. And so our objective is not just to turn the wheel, but to turn the wheel at the same time and in the same direction. So sometimes a spoke over here can have something that causes it to bend a little bit, and it affects the work that's going on everywhere else. And so we have to stop and back up and regroup and look and see, okay, how can we work this out such that when we get ready to turn, it's going that way. It may be a little bent, but it's all going the same direction. So listening to you, then we'll visit on that issue, because I would imagine that if you have kind of I'll call it a sisterhood, if you would.
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly
That
energy.
may be beneficial in terms of healing processes as well. So it's something we can definitely look at.
Yeah, community is important in any aspect that we work in, but certainly not all change is bad. We have that discussion as well.
That's right.
So sometimes it's about flexibility and adapting and like you said, turning it into something new. So any challenges that you can identify in terms of working with human service organizations that you guys have had to overcome at the county?
Challenges in working with them. Well, we have a great working relationship with such places as Genesis, Trusted World. Are you familiar with Trusted World?
No, I haven't heard of them. I've heard of Genesis.
Well, we are enjoying a great relationship with Trusted World. And of course, we have members who participate in task forces for human trafficking and things like that. And so that kind of pushes us more so into delving into what these things are about and what causes them and the results of them when we see them happening. So we enjoy those relationships. I'm sure there are some others that I'm not thinking of right now, though.
Lesley, I know you like telling stories, right?
I do.
We're going to lean on that for a couple of
Good news,
seconds.
bad news.
I know that you've had a long history with Resolana and have come across some amazing women with some amazing transformations. Can you tell us about a couple of stories right off the bat that you may be able to think of?
One of the things that we talk about with women coming into Resolana, the main thing we want to do is sort of turn the light on to the fact of their unresolved trauma. we had a woman who came into Resolana in her 50s, and she had already been incarcerated for 15 years for killing her brother. And she was on her way to kill her father when she was arrested. And she had been sexually abused by every man in her life as a child. And she snapped. She was in her early 20s, and she snapped, and she started to go on that killing spree. When she came into Resolana in her 50s, it was the first time anybody had ever suggested to her that her mental health was based on this sexual abuse. To her, it was just Tuesday. Where she was raised, this would happen to all of the girls in that community. And so to see that, you know, I love this metaphor. I think about if you don't know that you have unresolved trauma, it's like you're living in a room that's completely pitch black and there's furniture everywhere. And you're walking around and you hit your knee and your knee starts to bleed. I gotta fix my knee. Oh my Lord, what happened? What did I do? How'd that happen? I don't know, it's bleeding, I gotta help me. Okay, I got that taken care of. Okay, I'm gonna stand up. Okay, I'm gonna go this way this time because I don't, oh my heaven, I hit a lamp. Now I'm bleeding over here. What happened? You know, there's just this unawareness and these horrible things keep happening to me and I keep doing these things to myself, it seems, right? And I'm bleeding over and over and over again. So in Resolana, we turn that light on. And at least you can look around and go, I'm not crazy. No wonder I've been hitting things and bleeding, right? So I think that's the most impactful thing in many ways that we do. And this woman, I mean, when she got out, she served 2 years because she was on a possession charge at this point. She got a house she got in the housing. I mean, now she's in her late 60s. She's living, right, in a way that she never would have been able to live, or in understanding the impact of that childhood. And that's, you know, 40 years later that she learned that. So
I always thought it was profound when I speak to some of the women and they say, going to jail saved my life.
yes. Yeah.
And you're thinking,
Sure.
okay, how?
Yeah.
But when you hear stories like that, it's clear. Because certainly there have been times that, you know, people wish they can just press pause on their life and figure everything out, you know, mentally. And certainly being in an environment where you're kind of forced to do that and have that time out, if you will, it could be very helpful in, you know, the reflective process.
For sure. Yeah. Oh, so many say that. So many say that. And we have several. It's really interesting now. The young people, more and more young women are coming. I mean, 17, 18 years old coming into the pod and getting this kind of going at that age. Think of the difference their life will be now, right? And I was telling the sheriff earlier about a young woman that was in the pod 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and she she turned 18 in the pod, was in the pod 1.5 years while she was waiting for a trial. And she ended up getting 20 years, and she served 4 of them in prison, and now she's out on parole, and she's already got her undergraduate in social work. She's getting her master's. And so her whole life, right, she was deep into the drug trafficking kind of underbelly of Dallas. And, you know, to go from a 17-year-old doing that to now a 26-year-old getting her master's in social work, wow. You know, and her life story, what that will do for other young women, right, to help them. So,
Sheriff Brown, when you hear stories like that, does it kind of give you a rewarding affirmment of, you know, this is one of the reasons why I do what I do?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When you hear things like that, then you can't help but, and like you said, they don't want to go to jail, but in many instances, it's a blessing that they went. How do you say it's a blessing that they went to jail? Well, yeah, because it caused them to stop, back up, regroup, and then start focusing on what keeps happening that I keep winding up in this situation, in this setting. How do I change that? What do I do? There's got to be something that I can do to not keep going down this avenue. So what is it? And I think it's great to hear you say that we're seeing more young people now, because that means that we are getting a message to them at a younger age. They're not waiting until they're in their 50s.
Right.
We're reaching them at a younger age. And so they are actively, you know, taking us up on what it is that we're saying and pursuing the help. So I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's hard to make a change when you have to get up and make a living, or you have to get up and try to eat. You know, those are things that the more fortunate people of our society don't have to worry about. But, you know, it's kind of hard to dig yourself out of a hole sometimes, and you need that break.
Yeah, and think about it in the case of women. I mean, if you have children, you have children who are watching this cycle, this thing that you're in, that you're caught in. So you know that you've got to address that in your mind, and how is it that you're going to go back to those children, and what are they going to be thinking? What are you going to be thinking as they are looking up at mommy, you know? All of that has to be thought about and dealt with.
Absolutely. So is there anything today that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to touch on? I wanted to make sure you guys had an opportunity to let the community know anything on the horizon or any.
Well, I do know that we have, and you can talk about the grant, I do know that we have a program called A Fighting Chance that we have recently implemented in our system, and so we're using that as an opportunity to do just that. Give people who have come to our care a fighting chance, an opportunity to get out, and an opportunity to stay out. So we're excited about that.
And I love that name because that's what they need. You know, they need that, that somebody giving them that while they're in jail to give them a plan. What am I going to do when they get out?
Yes.
Because exactly like you said, they all have children, and if you need to feed a child or you need to find a place to live, and then suddenly you don't have any money to do anything, what are you going to do? Go back to what you. And you mentioned the grant. VOA just got I think it's a Department of Justice, if I'm going to say that right, but it's a $900,000 grant for reentry, which is the key. Having done this for 17 years, when we first started, first couple of years, we thought we're just doing such good things, helping them so much while they're in the jail, and say, best of luck when you leave. Not understanding, you know, forget what you learned in jail if you can't feed yourself, right? And so we've understood now, later, it's all about the reentry.
The continuity.
That's right.
Even after they leave,
And helping them be able to get those job skills.
Yes.
And so now this grant will hire a job specialist and hire a case manager to just start in the jail and follow them when they get out into the world. Make sure they have the employment, they have a housing, they have something to go to, right? And they have some plan if their kids are with their mom or with their brother or somebody. Maybe the kids need to stay there for 6 months while I get this taken care of, and helping them get that plan in place. So we're really excited about that reentry, and I think that's going to make a huge difference.
You know, reentry programming is kind of how VOA started. You know, one of our founders, Maud Booth, she was the first woman that was allowed to go into Sing Sing.
Sing Sing,
wow.
New York.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where everything started from. I think that's always going to be an integral part of what we do at Volunteers of America. Like Lesley said, we have our workforce development programming that's helping people once they leave jail, and then we have reentry services that gives them a place to live and also gives them job experience and helps them get back on their feet. And so there's a lot of good going on out there. Sheriff Brown, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to support human services in our county. And obviously your support to Volunteers of America, Texas. We appreciate you.
It's huge.
Absolutely.
Changing lives every day, Sheriff. Changing lives every day.
And that's what we should be doing, you know. We're called to serve. This is a service industry, believe it or not. It's a service industry, and we're called to serve. And so we've got to affect lives, make changes.
That's right.
That's what we're doing.
Thank you, Lesley, for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.